Hi, I'm Catherine, and I'm 45 years old. I work as a freelance photographer, specializing in family portraits and wedding photography. I've been capturing life's most precious moments for over 20 years, and my camera has been my most trusted companion through every stage of my career. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how I tried to pass on my greatest passion to my daughter, only to have that gesture dismissed with four words that still echo in my mind. It's not my aesthetic. You know that feeling when you want to share something you love deeply with someone who means the world to you? When you carefully choose a gift that represents not just an object, but a piece of your soul, your history, your dreams for their future? Well, I experienced the complete opposite of appreciation when I gave my daughter Sophia my very first camera, a vintage Nikon that had launched my entire career, and she gave it away to a friend because it didn't match her modern, minimalist lifestyle. Let me tell you the whole story because this isn't just about a camera. This is about legacy, about the things we treasure and hope to pass down, and about the heartbreaking moment when you realize that what means everything to you means nothing to the person you love most. That camera, a 1985 Nikon FM2, was more than just equipment to me. It was the beginning of everything. I bought it when I was 22 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in art history and absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I'd been working at a coffee shop, feeling lost and uninspired, when I walked past a camera store and saw that beautiful silver and black body sitting in the window. I couldn't afford it, not even close, but something about that camera called to me in a way I'd never experienced before. I went home, counted every penny I had, borrowed money from my parents, and returned the next day to buy it. The store owner, an elderly man named Frank, who became my first photography mentor, taught me how to load film, adjust the light meter, and understand the relationship between aperture and shutter speed. Photography isn't about the camera, Frank told me as he wrapped my new treasure in protective cloth. It's about seeing the world differently. This camera will teach you to notice light, to capture moments that matter, to tell stories without words. He was right. That camera changed my life. It taught me patience as I learned to wait for the perfect light. It taught me precision as I carefully composed each shot, knowing that film was expensive and every frame mattered. It taught me to see beauty in ordinary moments, the way morning light fell across my kitchen table, the expression on a stranger's face at a bus stop, the dance of shadows on a wall. Within 2 years, I was making money with that camera. Within 5 years, I had built a successful photography business. That little silver Nikon had given me a career, a passion, and a way to see the world that filled every day with possibility. When Sophia was born, that camera captured her first breath, her first smile, her first steps. Every milestone of her childhood was preserved through the lens of the Nikon that had changed my life. I have hundreds of rolls of film documenting her growth, not the casual snapshots that most parents take, but carefully composed portraits that show the evolution of her personality, the development of her character, the way light played across her face as she grew from baby to child to teenager. As Sophia got older, she became fascinated by my work. She would sit quietly in the corner during portrait sessions, watching how I interacted with clients, how I adjusted lighting, how I captured the perfect moment. When she was 10, she started asking if she could help carry my equipment to shoots. By 12, she was asking technical questions about exposure and composition. "Mom, why do you use that old camera instead of a digital one?" she asked one day as she watched me carefully load a roll of film. "Wouldn't it be easier if you could just delete the bad pictures?" I explained to her the magic of film photography, how it forces you to slow down, to think about each shot, to understand light and composition before pressing the shutter. I told her about the anticipation of developing film, The excitement of seeing your images appear in the darkroom, the way film captures color and texture in a way that digital still can't quite replicate. Each frame costs money, she explained, so you learn to make every shot count. You become more intentional, more thoughtful. This camera taught me to see. Sophia seemed to understand. She would ask to look through the viewfinder, learning to focus manually, understanding how the light meter worked. During our family vacations, she would take turns with my backup camera, a newer digital SLR, but she always seemed most intrigued by the vintage Nikon. For her 16th birthday, I bought her a modern digital camera, a good one, professional quality, with all the features a young photographer could want. She was thrilled and immediately started taking pictures of everything: her friends, her room, random objects around the house. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and I felt proud watching her develop an eye for composition and lighting. But I noticed that her photography was different from mine. Where I sought to capture emotion and meaning, Sophia focused on aesthetic perfection. Her photos were beautiful, but felt somehow hollow, perfectly composed, but lacking soul. They were the kind of images that looked stunning on Instagram but didn't tell stories or capture the essence of a moment. I didn't think much of it at the time. I assumed her style would develop as she gained more experience. After all, I had spent decades learning to see beyond the surface, to capture the deeper truths that existed in every frame. As Sophia's 18th birthday approached, I decided it was time to pass on my most treasured possession, the camera that started my career, that captured her entire childhood, that represented everything I valued about the art of photography. I wanted to give her something with real history, real meaning. Not just another piece of modern equipment, but a bridge between her future and my past. I spent weeks preparing for Sophia's 18th birthday gift. This wasn't just about giving her a camera, it was about passing down a legacy, sharing a piece of my soul, and trusting her with something that had shaped every important moment of my adult life. First, I had the camera professionally serviced. Even though it still worked perfectly after all these years, I wanted to make sure every mechanism was cleaned, calibrated, and functioning at its absolute best. The technician, a specialist in vintage cameras, was amazed by its condition. "You've taken exceptional care of this," he told me as he gently cleaned the mirror and adjusted the light meter. "These FM2s were built like tanks, but this one looks like it just came out of the factory. Someone's going to be very lucky to receive this." Next, I put together a complete kit that would give Sophia everything she needed to start shooting film seriously. I included a selection of different lenses: a 50mm prime for portraits, a 28mm wide-angle for landscapes, and an 85mm for more compressed artistic shots. I bought her a variety of film stocks: black and white for learning the fundamentals, color negative for everyday shooting, and slide film for those special moments when you want colors that practically glow. I also wrote her a letter, several pages, explaining the history of the camera, sharing some of my favorite memories of shots I'd taken with it, and offering to teach her film development in the darkroom I'd set up in our basement. I wanted her to experience the full process, from loading the film to watching the image slowly appear in the developer. The presentation itself was important to me. I found a beautiful vintage camera bag, the kind photographers used in the 1980s, and arranged everything inside with care. The camera sat in the center, surrounded by the lenses and film, with my letter placed on top. On the morning of her birthday, I woke up early and set everything up in the living room. When Sophia came downstairs, still in her pajamas, she found the camera bag sitting on the coffee table with a card that simply said, "For the next chapter of your story." I watched her face as she opened the bag and saw the camera. For a moment, her expression was exactly what I'd hoped for: surprise, curiosity, and what looked like genuine appreciation. She lifted the camera carefully, feeling its weight, running her fingers over the textured grip where my hands had worn smooth spots over 20 years of use. "Mom, is this your camera?" she asked, looking up at me with wide eyes. "Your first camera?" "It is," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I wanted you to have it. This camera launched my career, captured your entire childhood, and taught me everything I know about seeing the world through a lens. Now it's yours." For a moment, everything felt perfect. I was passing down something precious, something meaningful to the daughter I loved more than anything in the world. I had no idea that within 6 months, that camera would be sitting in a stranger's house, dismissed as incompatible with my daughter's aesthetic vision. In the weeks immediately following Sophia's birthday, I was optimistic about her relationship with the camera. She asked thoughtful questions about film photography, and I spent several evenings teaching her how to load film properly, how to read the light meter, and how to understand the relationship between aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. We even had a few photo sessions together. I took her to some of my favorite shooting locations around the city, a park with beautiful golden hour light, an old industrial area with interesting textures and shadows, a quiet street lined with historic buildings. She seemed engaged, carefully composing her shots and taking time to consider each frame before pressing the shutter. "This is so different from digital," she said during one of our outings. "You really have to think about what you're doing." "That's exactly the point," I replied, feeling hopeful that she was beginning to understand the value of intentional photography. When each shot costs money and you can't see the result immediately, you learn to be more deliberate about what you capture. But as the weeks passed, I noticed that Sophia was using the camera less and less frequently. When I asked about it, she always had reasonable explanations. Too much homework, too many social commitments, not enough time to really focus on film photography the way it deserved. "I don't want to waste the film by taking bad pictures," she would say. "I want to wait until I have time to really concentrate." I understood this reasoning, but something about it felt off. Photography had never been about waiting for perfect conditions for me. Some of my best shots had been spontaneous moments, captured quickly when life presented unexpected beauty or meaning. Then I started noticing changes in Sophia's overall aesthetic preferences. She was spending more time curating her social media presence, focusing on a very specific visual style that was clean, minimal, and decidedly modern. Her room underwent a complete redesign. Out went her childhood decorations, her colorful artwork, and her collections of books and trinkets. In came white furniture, geometric prints, and a carefully curated selection of objects that all seemed to follow some invisible style guide. "I'm really into minimalism right now," she explained when I commented on the dramatic change. "I want everything in my space to serve a purpose and look cohesive." I began to suspect that my vintage camera, with its mechanical dials and worn leather grip, didn't fit into this new aesthetic vision. But I told myself I was being paranoid. Surely she understood that the camera's value wasn't about how it looked on a shelf, but about what it could help her create. When I offered to help her develop the rolls of film she'd shot during our early sessions together, she seemed reluctant. "Maybe later, Mom. I want to finish the whole roll first, and I haven't really had time to use it much lately." That's when I started to worry that the gift I'd given with so much love and intention was slowly becoming a burden rather than a treasure. The truth came out on a Tuesday afternoon in November, about 6 months after I'd given Sophia the camera. I was dropping off some groceries at her apartment. She'd moved out for college but still lived close enough for regular visits, when I noticed something that made my heart stop. The camera was nowhere to be seen. Sophia's apartment was small, and I knew every corner of it from helping her move in and decorate. The camera, which should have been prominently displayed or at least easily accessible for regular use, was simply not there. I checked her bedroom, her desk area, even the closets when she stepped out to take a phone call. Nothing. When she returned, I tried to ask casually, "Hey, honey, I don't see your camera anywhere. Are you keeping it somewhere safe?" The look that crossed her face, guilt mixed with defiance, told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. "Oh," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I gave it to my friend Marcus. He's really into vintage stuff, and he's been wanting to try film photography. I thought he'd appreciate it more than I was using it." Gave it away. She had given away the camera that had launched my career, captured her childhood, and represented 20 years of my professional life. "You gave it away?" I repeated, hoping I'd misheard. "Yeah," she said, still avoiding eye contact. "I mean, I wasn't really using it much, and Marcus was so excited about it. He's actually been taking pictures with it every weekend." Sophia, that wasn't just any camera. That was my first camera, the one I used to build my entire career, the one that took every important photo of your childhood. She finally looked at me, and what I saw in her expression was worse than guilt. It was indifference. "I know, Mom, but honestly, it just wasn't my aesthetic. The whole vintage look doesn't really fit with my style anymore. Marcus loves all that retro stuff, so I thought it made sense to give it to someone who would actually use it." My aesthetic. 20 years of memories, a career launching tool, a piece of family history. Reduced to an aesthetic choice? Sophia, that camera was a gift, a meaningful gift with history and sentimental value. You don't just give away something like that because it doesn't match your decor. "It's just a camera, Mom," she said, her voice taking on an edge of irritation. "And honestly, I prefer digital anyway. It's more practical and the images look cleaner. That old camera was kind of outdated." Outdated. The camera that taught me to see, that captured light and shadow and emotion in ways that digital still couldn't replicate, was outdated. Besides, Marcus really appreciates it. He's been posting these amazing film photos on Instagram. At least someone's getting good use out of it. Someone else was creating art with my camera, while my own daughter dismissed it as incompatible with her minimalist lifestyle. I left Sophia's apartment that day feeling like I'd lost something much more significant than a camera. I'd lost the belief that my daughter and I shared the same values, the same appreciation for things that carry meaning beyond their surface appearance. Over the next few weeks, I found myself checking Marcus's Instagram account, a strange and painful ritual. There was my camera, my faithful companion of 20 years, being used to create the kind of thoughtful, intentional photographs I'd always hoped Sophia would learn to appreciate. Marcus understood the weight of each frame, the importance of composition, the way film captures light differently than digital. In one of his posts, he wrote, "Grateful to have inherited this incredible vintage Nikon from a friend. There's something magical about shooting film. It forces you to slow down and really consider each shot. Every frame feels precious." Inherited. As if Sophia had passed away and left it to him, rather than casually discarding a meaningful gift because it didn't fit her aesthetic vision. I considered asking Sophia for Marcus's contact information, thought about reaching out to him directly to explain the camera's history and ask if he'd be willing to sell it back to me. But then I realized that would be missing the point entirely. The camera was just an object. Painful as it was to lose it, what really hurt was understanding who my daughter had become. 2 months later, Sophia called to ask if I could help her with a down payment on a new car. She mentioned, almost in passing, that she'd been thinking about getting back into photography and wondered if I had any recommendations for a good digital camera that would photograph well for social media. Something sleek and modern, she said, maybe in white or rose gold to match my laptop. That's when I understood that we had fundamentally different relationships with the things in our lives. For Sophia, objects were accessories. They needed to serve not just a functional purpose, but an aesthetic one. They needed to project the right image, fit the right lifestyle, match the right color scheme. For me, objects carry stories. They connect us to our past, to the people who owned them before us, to the moments they've witnessed and captured. My camera wasn't just a tool. It was a repository of memories, a bridge between generations, a tangible link to the work I built my life around. I told Sophia I couldn't help her with the car down payment, and I didn't recommend any cameras. Instead, I started a tradition of giving her gift cards for her birthday and holidays, practical, aesthetic-neutral presents that she could use however she wanted without disappointing me with their eventual fate. I also started teaching photography workshops for young people who were genuinely interested in learning about film photography, about slowing down, about the art of seeing rather than just capturing. These students reminded me why I fell in love with photography in the first place, not for the way cameras looked on a shelf, but for the way they could help us see the world with new eyes. Sometimes the most painful lessons teach us the most valuable truths. Not everyone will treasure what we treasure, and that's okay. The tragedy isn't in losing the object, it's in trying to share your soul with someone who only sees the surface. Do you enjoy stories with emotion and twists? Then like, subscribe, and activate the bell. Here, every word touches you.